Ever wondered about the safety of vaccines? Are you skeptical, perhaps even warned against it? Allow us to flip the narrative and guide you through the reassuring world of vaccination with our irresistible propaganda. Indulge in the ultimate fusion of safety and progress with our vaccine. Discover the thrill of making health decisions as sexy as they are responsible. Our sultry and secularly biased experts promise a journey filled with safety, fun, and social acceptance. Zero vaccine shaming here. Unleash your passion for protection and let the chemistry of care guide you to the perfect vaccine match. No side effects, no fuss, because in this intricate world, every illness you may have acquired is better explained by life's complexities than casting shadows on the wonder of vaccination. Don't miss out on the hottest decision you can make. Ask your doctor which vaccine is right for you.
Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Xirtus or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
So when you get to be like really rich, you stop arguing about how much something costs. Have you noticed? It's like multi-billionaires, they don't really care about the number change. Like, what is $40 billion in 1980 versus 2020? Like, it's not relevant. It has to do with what you can buy and sell. It's really all comes back down to what your word is worth. And then when you die, right, and the streets are paved with gold or fire, it doesn't really matter how much gold you have. So it's more about your word. All you have is your word. So it becomes this thing where you're making an agreement. I will do this and you will do that. It's a goods and exchange of services. Hi, I'm Andreas. This is Gunwoo. Welcome to Wednesday Ultra.
Jeez, what an intro. Jesus
we
Christ.
were talking right before, and then we had like a whole bunch of these like AI, thing.
Yeah.
I got these little segments. So I just
very unsettling intro, yeah.
No, I felt like that's it's only unsettling to the humans who watch. I feel like to all of the robots that are looking at this video, and they're the only ones who matter, right? Like the robots, let's be honest. They're the ones who, like, if you like my video, I care, but I'm a human. But if a robot sees another robot didn't like my video, that's a problem. So I think we do have to respect, robots to the point was you were talking about bartering. And it's so important because bartering is how things are done when you get to a big level. You're like, well, I'll let you do this movie, right? I think Ben Stiller got to direct The Cable Guy because Judd Apatow wasn't on the list, and they made with their friends, and they make a deal like you get to do this, and it's why Jim Carrey made $20 million off of the worst movie he made, Cable Guy, right? Like these things are all about bartering, and then the $20 million is part of that barter, but we have to stop looking at the number. We have to start looking at the actual bartering. You were talking about that. What was the deal? Your friend in coffee.
Oh, right. So yeah. So this like, I've only dabbled on this, right? Dip my toes in this field of study. This whole Jordan Maxwell stuff that you talk
and he's great, isn't he? Yeah, no.
Right. So talking about like how the whole War of 1812 leading to eventually the Bank War of 1834, and how eventually America was subjected to a corporation under the Rothschilds, essentially. So like all of that stuff, with being context, my friend got really deep into that. Like I only just got pipeline information from him because, but he was looking at this one legal case that happened in the 80s, that were like one man managed to pay for his court fees with coffee beans.
Right. Which was amazing because at that time, commodities markets were going crazy. So what people need to understand also about commodities market is you're predicting how much coffee beans are going to be worth. And, you find out that this other country that McDonald's has colonized, right? They've basically made coffee slaves, and then that island's going to have coffee beans drop the coffee. So you might I think coffee beans are going to be worth 6 cents a pound, but they might be worth 3 cents a pound or 8 cents a pound. Commodities trading, and people were making $250,000 in the 80s off of this, but they were also losing that money.
Well, yeah, no, but this isn't a matter of like a commodity-based exchange, rather like.
Oh, he literally had freaking beans.
Yeah, literally beans brought up to the court. So and defined under the constitutional, the de jure republic barter system we had previously as a colony, brought that shit up and managed to declare coffee beans as legal tender, much like how states were traded with guns. Territory and land during the Louisiana Purchase was traded with pelts and guns, right? With the Native Americans and whatnot. Much like that, he used that kind of like Jedi mind tricks to declare coffee beans as legal tender under court of law. So my buddy is citing this court case to just essentially trade coffee beans straight up with the Federal Reserve and get legal tender from them, like an exchange, as like a 1-for-1 type of deal. No middleman, no banks. As like he's like an infinite money glitch is what he essentially is working on. So the reason why I bring this up is due to our previous conversation about X Church and the moving forward. So in the case where we need additional financing, I was wondering if we could dive further into this subject. And then
I feel like this is huge. I want to just confirm with one of the comments in the audience. Aaron is saying that he thought Channel 2 look like it was died or something like that. I'm just going and looking at it. It looks to me like channel 2 is working still. So I'm under the impression channel 2 is still fine. And everybody, please do subscribe to channel 2 because we're so close to 1,000, so we can monetize channel 2. But with coffee beans, it's interesting for a lot of reasons. The entire United States is built on this idea of the rights to exchange, the free market, which doesn't really exist because we had to say how free do we want our market, and then
right.
But if you had a laissez-faire market, it's only as a laissez-faire market would not require you to accept beans as currency, right? Because you could say, I don't want to accept these, and there's no one to enforce that. So we live in a non-free market, which says that you have to accept what we've, as a state or the federal, homogenized like this harmonization of economy. We accept these ideas as, and you must accept them too, to exist in our forum. And our forum exchanges goods and services and ideas, but you need to accept our rules.
Sorry to interrupt, but as I said previously, before off stream, that like capitalism is just a mask that we currently have to purport to essentially support this. The shadow government essentially is an oligarchical mercantilism system that was in place by monarchies from like post reset. Like which is why we have only like 13 families ruling the entire world. So through the Dutch and all whatever, et cetera, et cetera. The reason why people blame the Jews for money, banking, and whatever is all because it all comes down to the mercantilism and the Dutch East Company and all that stuff during the whole colonial era.
Right. I feel like the mercantilism gets a really bad rap. And so if you think about it, it's really the natural evolution of a city-state. So you've got this idea of city-state evolving into nation-state, but really it doesn't have to, right? It could have just evolved into a mercantile class. And when it does, it's pretty interesting. And we see that today. That's the alternative to a nation-state. We have these cities where anyone from all over the world might be in New York City, right? But New York City has enough money, that it has enough infrastructure, that whoever living in New York City, they have better opportunities. That's the theoretical idea of the mercantilists. And now it doesn't always work, obviously, but you can look at how New Amsterdam compares to, or the old New York compares to like Germantown in Pennsylvania or something. And you can see the difference where the Amish have their own, they don't have anything provided for them, so they have to build what they can. And you end up in this sort of primitivism, where in a city you don't have to worry about things are changing all the time, and so you end up it's almost like the elite. You don't have to worry so much about where your next meal is coming from, someone on the streets competing to sell you a meal cheaper than the other person, right? And so mercantilism can be very useful. You can have this is how you end up with the Dutch intelligentsia. There's all this that Spinoza, right? It's only because of mercantilism.
Right, but I'm saying like due to how mercantilism was structured throughout the growth of colonial powers, because of what you just mentioned, how useful it is, and the intelligence you have mentioned, along with the human network of Jesuits that was working together, they managed to establish a shadow government that way, which enshrouds the entire world currently under a global bank. But like the current system that we have, the economic systems that we have, we identify it as capitalism, but really that's just a mask that we have currently, buffering the fact that we still live under a barter mercantilist system. And that jurisdiction and law, jurisdiction is not the right word. That legislation still exists underneath bunch of piles of white papers that meets where we're at currently legally, if that makes sense. So if you know anything about like court cases, you tend to cite previous cases and like their ruling to judge a current case, right? So you can still legally cite cases in terms of if you're dealing with an economic fraud case or whatever, you can cite cases of whatever 1700s to apply the barter system to your current court case, so you can get out, which is how like billionaires get off scot-free, through like legal loopholes, essentially, right?
There's a value to the. Oh, we did it. All right, here we go. It's early on, but you know what? I still love you guys, so we're gonna have it happen.
Box again.
Common law.
You. But yeah, like
I can hear you fine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to mention, like, you know, all this stuff sounds kooky as hell, and it's a genuine mindfuck to get into, which is only why I did my toes into it. I have buddies that have, well, yeah, I have several buddies currently looking into it, which have lost their minds, going down the rabbit hole, which is why I haven't gone as far as them currently. So like only like know half of like partially know what I'm talking about, because I get pipeline information from them.
Well, just for the chorus here, we gotta do it.
Right.
All right, I feel a little bit better now. Anyway, so with bartering, yes, the case law is interesting because
I was trying to like before I was cut off, I was trying to turn this conversation addressing common law and commerce and maritime law and how that still applies today, because we still live under a court system. You know, the whole due process system that we have in the United States is the Court of York. It is the Masonic Court of York, which means it is an extension of the Rothschilds. And so yeah,
York, it's the Masonic Court of York. Is it the York Rite? You're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, essentially, yeah.
So the York Rite, kind of, you say it's not a naval court, it's a Masonic court.
It's a Masonic, but yeah, it is a maritime court, but it is also, but yeah, it's a free under Masonry.
What a sweet floor.
So awesome so United States law currently, because we're under an empire at the moment, we have forfeited our de jure republic and our constitutional rights, essentially, which is why they get infringed every day. They only exist. They only exist as a guidance, essentially. But yeah,
you have to be a belligerent claimant. The idea is that you don't really have rights unless you belligerently claim them, which proves
right.
This social privileges.
This goes into sovereign citizen territory and stuff like that. We got like.
But you've already given. I mean, the idea is everyone who thinks that when they watch a YouTube video they can become a sovereign citizen,
right?
It's probably too late by the point your parents had you birthed in a hospital, because then there was a witness and they signed a social security number. Like, there's tons of people out
your
there.
Birth certificate, your birthing certificate, yeah.
Yeah, and this is funny because so many people were upset. Did you see that thing earlier? Well, we don't have to talk about the news, but did you see that thing earlier where it was like some illegal immigrants in New York City?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So this whole thing, this guy was all upset. He's like, deport everyone, and a large mob of illegal aliens brutally attacked. And I'm sorry, dude. Like, I'm broken. I am broken. I don't pass the Rorschach test. All I see is people helping each other. This is a video of these two cops grabbing this guy. They're pulling him to the freaking ground, and then everyone around them, they get the guy away from police brutality. What might be police brutality. And to ask whether or not it's commonplace in the NYPD to have corruption misconduct. I mean, I don't mean to go to the Wikipedia page
so
about
absurd.
This, but it's just like, I find it really like, whose side are you on?
Right.
Really? Like, what is wrong with you if you're supporting this? I mean, the only thing that you can do here that seems right is to try to, I mean, because there's no way they're going to get a fair trial. Look at this person on the ground. There's no way they're going to get a fair trial. They're also an illegal immigrant, so they're not expected to get a fair trial. And what you're saying, that they're here because they're stoked to be here. Have you seen what work they have to do in New York City? By the way, it's way worse than in your Midwest like Safeway or supermarket parking lot where they build pools for you. It's a lot worse in New York City, just so you know, to be an illegal immigrant. So I don't know, didn't pass the smell test for me. But this idea of illegal immigrants, illegal aliens not having the same rights, when we're saying what an inalienable right is, It's something acknowledged, that when you're going into a Masonic court, you're going to look at this person, regardless of what color they are, and you're going to say, this is a human being, and that they have inalienable rights that I can't. And if I were to try to take away from you, God would punish me in creative ways, right? That's the kind of logic you need when you go into a court like that.
Right. Yeah, dude. Oh, go on.
I don't know, just rant. I'm just thinking about like the beans thing though, because it's so important to think about the value, your self-value. And so if someone says, oh yeah, like my stock is worth $40 billion, I'll give stock to the government. This happens. The government takes your car. If you're a drug dealer, they'll take your property and all these things, right? And that's a barter. They're like, yeah, well, we'll figure out how much you owe the state, and then the rest you'll work off in jail for 150 years. A lot of that time in prison is about time served. What are you serving? You're serving the value that the state says you owe them, right? So I mean, it's interesting. If you have enough value, if you're producing enough coffee beans, that you might be able to say, you know, this is the value that
you can be above the law. Yeah.
Well, it's not above the law. It's like it's beyond the law, right? Because you're still in the law. You're still following rules. Like it's like if you were to get pulled over by a police officer driving 1,000 miles. No, there was a guy in San Francisco. They made a law that said you couldn't fly over San Francisco, and it was going to be a fine of $10,000. The guy, I think, was Jeff Bezos. He said, I don't care. I'll pay $10,000 like a parking fee to fly over San Francisco, right? He's still following the rules.
Right. But like, yeah.
But the rules don't matter, you know, because it's $10,000. It's just like 10 seconds to him of people watching Amazon Prime.
Yeah. I don't know what else to add to this, but like just like
there's other things in bartering to talk about. Let me start.
Right. No, like I just remember like coming across like an epiphany earlier, like a few days ago. Talked to a friend, realizing that like inflation itself, although in theory it's real, but it essentially isn't, because the fact that our Federal Reserve exists as a private entity, they can print endlessly because what they're producing is not real currency. These are debt notes. So like it has no real effect to our current actual dollar without us being produced by Treasury. So we're currently, as John McAfee said during one of his last interviews, that our economy essentially, the world economy is essentially a Ponzi scheme, and fiat currency is just script. It's just essentially store credit. Every world currency under the World Bank is just store credit tied to that specific country. They have private reserves being produced in their own treasuries that they will never give to you. There's only reserved for the rich people to use as OPM.
So in other words, every state has a license to extract wealth and value from their goods, and like, so they own humans essentially, each state, because a state has a legitimate source of violence, and they can force you to pay their debts.
We are cattle. Chattel. Yeah. You know how like the 19th Amendment, what was it? The 19th Amendment when the ratified slavery?
The 13th Amendment was ratified today. The 13th Amendment was ratified January 31st in 1865.
And it says, slavery is abolished like unless but can be used as a punishment for a crime. So slavery still exists, which is why our penal system is the way it is.
It's pretty crazy. Okay, so first off, Philly Jesus returns as Lyft driver after a years-long hiatus, so nature is healing. That's
what
important.
A transition.
But there's a couple other things. Pope Sylvester the first white pope, I like to call him, the white pope. He was not black because the pope before him was black. I don't know. Do I have a picture of that somewhere? Here's the black pope right before him. Right, this is the pope that he replaced. Militias.
Wait, there was an actual more pope?
Bruh,
holy shit.
Bruh, all the popes were black.
What?
Come on. Up until Sylvester,
I had no idea because I never cared for the Catholics.
Well, that's the thing. It's before the Catholic Church. It's the
really?
Pope Sylvester is the Pope of the First Council of Nicaea. So the Council of Nicaea is the Catholic thing where you have to say we believe in the Council of Nicaea and treaty, whatever.
Yeah.
And we've gotten rid of the Donatism is?
No, remind me.
Donatism is not from the Ninja Turtles. It's actually a pure priesthood that believed you had to be completely without sin in order to perform the Eucharist and pardon others. And so there's a bunch of priests that were not completely without sin. In other words, they were like cannibals, pedophiles, murderers, all kinds of stuff. And that, not everybody, but the ones who were, that upset the Donatists. The Donatists, I don't know whether to say Donatus or Donatus. It depends on if you're more Latin. But the Donatists, they've decided you had to be pure, and this upset the order of the church, because the majority of the priests, it looks like, were not without sin, perfectly without sin. And so they thought the Donatists were just pious freaks. And then, of course, to be without sin, you're probably in the minority. So they got killed off. And
yeah, but did they get killed off the same time as the Cathars, like in the same era?
No, Cathars are later. Donatists,
gotcha.
Donatists are like 300.
Because like when you were explaining Donatism to me, they sounded very similar to the Cathars and what happened to them.
All right. If we're gonna do a Tartaria thing, we could easily flamenco this, because 12th to 14th century, you know, if you want to go there. But I mean, how amazing is it that history repeats itself regardless? Here's this idea of Pope Sylvester. He comes in. He's aimed at the Arian controversy, everything that we think of as Catholicism, and the division of the great abominable church from the one true church or whatever. This is all happening under the first white pope. So, and that all happened on January 31st. Happy anniversary, everybody. That's today, if you didn't know.
Interesting.
Also, the gunpowder plot, because we kind of remember a Jesuit treason that happened in October or November. 5th of November is how I'm supposed to remember it, but they really planned it since October. It was finally culminated in a court trial and a drawing and quartering of the 4 involved, including Jonathan Fox, on January 31st. Crazy. So he died today. Happy anniversary, Jonathan Fox. Guy Fox. I don't know why I did the Jonathan Fox. Isn't that Felicity?
But dude, yeah, the gunpowder plot is a meme so hard that like I've completely forgot its relevance.
Oh, that's so much better. Yeah, dude. Never forget the 5th of November.
Right.
Oh, that brutally okay. All right. 13th Amendment of the United States. Just gonna go quickly through it. This was January 31st. January 1st. House of Representatives signed on January 31st. So yeah, beginning of slavery, beginning of owning people, the beginning of the state owning people. I don't know if it's really the beginning per se, but this is when
the beginning was 1834, the bank war. So Andrew Jackson won, but eventually Andrew Jackson died. But before he died, he never in place a stable state bank for the American people. So it eventually collapsed and went bankrupt after due to the repercussions of 1812.
Can you imagine like a better set of propaganda than Jacksonian propaganda? I mean, like he's just this old, ripped Morty, like Rick and Morty doc guy, right?
Yeah.
Every time he just looks so good. I want to hate him, and I never can get around to it.
Absolute Sigma male. But but eventually, what's it? 1834.
The bank war.
The bank war. So in order to the efforts made by Congress to stabilize the U.S. economy. So at this time, post-bank war, what was it, like 80% of currency? Well, no, sorry, not 80%. That's an exaggeration. Like I want to ballpark it to around 60%. I forgot the actual figures. I want 60 to 70% was like currency in circulation in the United States was all counterfeit due to how unregulated it was. Every state, due to constitutional law, every state had a right to their own state bank. So they produced
I don't know if it's fair to call it counterfeit. See, that's the problem, because up until 1865, it was expected that the banks of each state were producing their own money, and this became a war. Like so, for instance, like the is it the Louisiana or the Alabama Confederate Bank? Like they had a fort and they had all of this gold there, right? And it was stolen and brought to Fort Knox. I also think where's Fort Knox again? In Fort Knox.
Fort Knox.
In Kentucky. Yeah, I forget. I feel like because like the Confederate gold was what was powering Confederate money, and so Confederate money had actual value to it even before it was Confederate, because it was always Confederate. In 1780 and 1791, we changed to a Federalist Constitution, but that didn't really stop these banks from existing. And so that was a big thing with the Jacksonian Democrats, is that they saw the Warburg Bank that was trying to take over American banks, and Jackson didn't want a federal bank because he saw how this was a danger. He wanted each state to have their own banks because of what you were saying, like general stores.
Right. And then this all leads into, due to the instability of the American currency market, Southern plantation owners had an advantage to trade Spanish currency due to proximity with Florida and Cuba.
Right.
So yeah, so a lot
Which
of these
had actual gold.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, these Southern
Italians.
plantation owners had stockpiles of Spanish currency and gold, and then
Italians,
then following the Coinage Act of 1857, banning all foreign tender as legal tender, bankrupted the entirety of the South overnight, which is why they seceded.
Yeah, it would have bankrupted them.
You would have, but then yeah.
If they had acknowledged it. So this is the problem with like pretending there was no civil war. There has not been a civil war in the United States. There were literally new countries that developed, and I'm talking about the North. You know, because really there was no monolithic South. The South was a bunch of confederated American states, as had been designed in 1776. It wasn't until the North started to, especially in New York, to build enough wealth through trading and controlling of slaves in the South and in other parts of Brazil.
Don't forget the District of Columbia Corporation taking over the North first, then the industrialization and commerce came in after.
It depends. If you look at New York was already the administration of a lot of overseas slave trade. And so it was in their interest to take over New York. And with New York, I would say DC became the powerhouse that it was to become a new nation, to destroy the former nations that made up the United States, the Confederated United States. But it wasn't really until 1865 that they started blowing up the South, because you had to literally remove it in order for it to stop existing.
And also, they were losing up until 1863 every open battle they had with the Confederates. But then the Confederates would have won if they had more ammo. But then they failed to secure the railroads, and
if they had more gumption too. I think the thing
honestly,
they weren't trying to imperialize. They weren't trying to come up with the idea that the South was going to have to run the North the way the North came in.
They just wanted to be left alone.
Yeah. I mean, it would be almost impossible and untenable to operate the government of another nation. It's incredible. It's incredible that the Masons were able to do this to the South. Like they only were able to really do it for 9 years.
They did they accomplished all this through mafia ties, which is how the Jews rose to power.
Well, I mean, it's also important to remember that the North was anti-Semitic, and that they tried to make laws against Jewish and to arrest Jewish troops.
For the longest time, up until like the 1930s, America was anti-Semitic as hell, which is why the Jewish mafia, what they really call it, worked underground as a subsidiary from the Italian mob that existed. Yeah.
Right. It's interesting also, this idea of mobs, because we have to think about a world of frontiers, cities, states without monolithic government. The most logical thing is that generationally invested families in those areas are going to organize into some sort of governance. And to call those organized crime is kind of similar to call Confederate money counterfeit, right? It's it's not really correct. These mafia families.
It's like the Yakuza. They're like a corporate entity that has like blood oaths, essentially.
Yeah. But the Yakuza are also not what you see on TV. They're not constantly cutting off everyone's finger.
No, they're businessmen. They're just salarymen with tattoos, honestly.
Yeah. I find it kind of funny, because we're supposed to believe that there's, this is the way things are supposed to be. And that's constantly, whenever I come back to that, I'm reminded, like, no, this is the tangent universe where things have been pulled out of whack. And realistically, it should be where people in their communities have some say over what's happening in their community. And the fact that we made so much propaganda to say that it's the mob that's putting drugs in, like, it's the mob putting PCP and crack in DC, right? It's the mob.
It's the mob.
It's not the government. No, surely not.
But also, I have to add, so we have the Italian mob. They existed mainly for the pooling of labor forces, which is how they formed labor unions later in the 1900s. Their ability to pool labor of just unprecedented amount of labor was their leverage in gaining power. But the U.S. Marshals taming the Wild West. You know, that whole narrative. That is the whole Tombstone movie and all that shit is essentially how the Masons establish court law across the entire United States.
Fun fact, Robert E. Lee decided he would fight for the Confederates on January 31st. So that's another sync right there in 1862. January 31st, he's like, all right, I'll do it, because he was from Virginia and he was thinking he shouldn't fight against his own people, but he kind of had to. And one of the things is the Union, like we were talking about the Jewish people, there were a lot of Jewish slave owners and Confederate Jews, so they went against the Jews. And so Robert E. Lee was very quick to unite as many Confederate Jews to fight on the side of the Confederacy as possible. So I find that also very interesting that even at that point, there was a push to put Jewish people in camps in the United States from straight up the North government, and that the South had to fight against it. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty crazy.
What I'm finding crazy is the fact that the Confederacy is demonized in this country, even though we have written documentation that this is history.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and especially the idea of slavery, because when, again, the whole idea that the war was about slavery, I used to say it wasn't, but now it's, if you look at the 13th Amendment and how the government's allowed to enslave people, it clearly is. It clearly is that the Union is enslaving people, and they've built us into this economic slave state where, you know, it's not even just that you're
the capitalism, the capitalism, late stage capitalism being a mask to hide the fact we still live under a barter mercantilist system.
Let's look at that Black Pope again. Militias.
This guy's AI. I want to see some Byzantine paintings.
I don't know if we're gonna find any. I'll look, but TDs, militia TDs. Yeah, most of the pictures you're gonna find are gonna be like white. Oh no, that's not the right one. Pope Militias. Here you go. Look at that. They made him look kind of white, you know. That's what they do. That's what they do.
No. The thing is, I have a theory on this. I feel like because these paintings are so old, they look white due to saturation.
Maybe, but it's painted in gold. I feel like these paintings are not as. There we go. Look at that one. I feel like you'll find some paintings of him blacks. You'll find the Byzantine like to paint him more white. That just sort of that happens a lot. But the Russians do well with these black copper statues, like the ox copper. They start to look black more and more, and I feel like they do that on purpose because they're like, did you know?
But the thing is, their facial, like, no, sorry, their what's it called, facial hair, facial hair, like on other depictions look white for some reason.
Yeah, they straightened his hair, maybe because they're not used to the woolly hair thing. I don't know. Or it could be that I'm just Netflix.
Wait. So are these popes from the Ethiopic sect of Coptics?
No. These are popes in the early. So the earliest tradition goes, Jesus dies, then you get Peter, according to the Catholics. Although a lot of people argue about that, but then you've got from there every prophet, and then they just die, and other ones are born. And so until 300, you have basically Semitic, Byzantine, Berber Greeks, and there's a few Greeks there that are probably kind of, you know, at that time a lot of Greeks were white, and there are still white Greeks, but there are Greeks that are with the Turks as well, and the Greeks were everywhere, right? So there's kind of like saying America, like they were in so many places. They were
but to call them Greeks is like a modern colloquial. They are just like what Sabaeans or Phrygians or whatever.
Right, but they probably at the time would have considered themselves like more where the state they're from, like, than Greek. Although people would have said, "Hey, you're speaking the language of the Hellenistics, right? The Hellenes are all speaking that language, even if you're a Berber from North Africa." And they might. I think that's the same thing with when you say someone's Roman, but they actually turn out to be Croatian or Slovenian. It's the same kind of issue. There was another one, Bank of Amsterdam, established in 1609, January 31st. And so this was the first public bank to offer accounts not directly convertible to coin, right? And so this is that beginning of sort of commodities, virtual exchanges, keeping huge amounts of money. I mean, you remember the tulip craze. And
the War of Roses?
Yeah, well, no, the War of Roses isn't the tulip craze. The War of Roses has to do with the British king of winter, King Edward, right? I forget. We'll do the War of Roses.
Yeah.
I know what I'm going to talk about, but what's the War of Roses about?
The Dutch are obsessed with were obsessed with flowers back then, and also like the people.
The War of Roses was a civil war over the English throne, having to do with the House of Plantagenet and the Tudors, right? And I think it was King Edward the Third. I did it. Good job, Andreas. No, I was talking about the tulip
Wait, hold on.
crisis. The tulip crisis, tulip mania, was when they were trading NFTs in Holland in 1630s. So
Oh,
after
dude,
this,
yeah, no, yeah, I'm getting these two confused. I got the
yeah,
name because they're both flowers. Yeah,
yeah. No, I
my
mean,
bad.
I knew the difference, but I wanted to be sure about
Yeah,
editing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
tulip mania is NFT trading at its finest. They're thinking, wow, these tulips are worth so much money. And then
It
13th
collapsed
Monkey, 13th Monkey says he has a different take on it being Dutch, that it got to the point where like they were all in a room together with the plague and they weren't allowed to leave and they were going crazy and they had just crazy amounts of money. And it just got to a drunken hysteria. Like, I bet you those tulips are worth 500,000 pounds. No, £1 million. And they were straight up like just crazy. Tulip bulbs were trading for 20,000 to $1 million, or whatever the value was at that time. And they even, because the Dutch were everywhere. They had Chile, and so tulips were being grown in Chile and being brought up, and they were like, "This is perfect. We can have flowers in winter all the time." It was just, but it all collapsed.
Yeah,
Nobody cares about tulips. Not really.
But the thing is, like, you like read into a story like this, and it's like, huh, that's so absurd. Okay, most people just move on, dismiss. It's like, okay, that just happened, right? But I feel like
right after we talked about it a few years ago, the NFT craze happened. I was like, does nobody listen? Like, what is happening? God, yeah.
But the thing is, like, yeah, I understand. So we have the modern phenomenon of the NFT craze to compare this historical case, right? But at the same time, we have to consider the NFT boost in popularity was completely artificial, much like the tulip craze. So like I feel like the when you look at a story from history like this, that's like quite absurd. Like, okay, most people just like accept it and move on. But then like I feel as though that when you have stories like this, it's like a red flag to me. They're like, hey, there's more going on here that we're not being told. It's like a half truth here.
I mean, I
Because
think it's
the
also just
context.
inconceivable.
Right. Also, like, there's the lack of context too.
Well, imagine trying to explain the NFT craze in 200 years to people, because it's going to be the same thing. Like, people were trading pictures. Like, you mean like a framed photo? Yeah, we've heard of $40 million photo.
Right.
No. This is just the idea of the picture.
The thing is, much like the COVID hysteria, like it was media propagation, and then people followed suit somewhat, and then the people that somewhat followed suit were being over proportionalized and overrepresented to make it seem that everybody was in on it when it never made money. The entire the NFT craze in itself.
It steals money. Ponzi
It
scheme.
steals money. Yeah, it was a complete Ponzi scheme. Yeah, to raise money for whatever WEF is planning for Web3. But yeah, like so like we have to. So if that was the case in the modern day, and then we look back, realizing that the higher elites, that whoever exists up in the shadow government, they never change their fucking playbook, which is why people say history repeats itself, because it does. Because like the people in power just recycles the same thing over and over again, because people only have an attention span of 4 years.
Right. And you get, I think also there's something that happens. So kids that have never learned this lesson before, there's always some more of them. God, hopefully, because like the way it works now, it's really difficult, but it used to be like 52% of all people were under 18, right? And so you could constantly have the next election vote or die momentum. But people do this thing where you either become you become a conspiracy theorist. Sometimes, not everybody does. There's steps to get there. To get there, you first have to have a dream. The dream has to be destroyed. You have to go through cynicism. And then after cynicism, you have to get to conspiracy theory. And it works like you might try to buy something on TV. It's like a dream. It shows up. It's not the thing you wanted. You start to realize you're never going to get a hovercraft out of Bad Magazine, become cynical. And that's where a lot of people stop. A lot of people don't move on from there. They don't go on to the, like, what's really happening? What is real?
Right.
And who's doing this kind of, but that's like the next step, is to figure out what is really happening with this relationship. And if there's a group of people that have generationally invested in making a world a better place for them, then you have to look at all of the different people that are living in those states and what happens every generation. They might build up a little bit of wealth. it's all taken. It's just very interesting how you build up just enough wealth in one generation to take it the next generation, to keep them in a helter-skelter, right?
Right.
Tulips. Okay, I'm gonna just cover a tech story because I'm a nerd. So
Okay.
So Linus already did this, and he has millions of followers.
Oh, what
so
did HP do this time? I fucking hate HP.
I'm wasting my time talking about something that's already been better talked about, probably. But I don't think they didn't quite cover it as well as I would, in my opinion. I just said it. Okay. Here's the deal. They got upset because of printers. And their main concern is that they want to turn HP printers into a service technology because the CEO considers printer customers, they consider customers an investment. And if customers don't buy enough supplies, it's a bad investment. So it's this crazy, evil, feudalistic logic. And they're saying that by turning printers into a rental system, that they're going to be able to provide more printing to more people. And they bring up the fact that printers are now able to hack into your network, because if you bought, like, their parallel supplies, the parallel supplies not made by HP, well, HP put a chip in theirs to make sure that it's an HP chip. If you get someone to copy that chip, they might be able to use that chip to hack into your network and find vulnerabilities. It's never been done yet, but they've proven it's possible. But it kind of makes the point, why the heck are they putting chips in your printer ink cartridges? Because that's the area of vulnerability. And if you stop doing that, HP, then there wouldn't be any more vulnerabilities. So stop putting chips in your dang cartridges, for one thing. But I'll go further. All printers pretty much have tracking dots. Did you know about this? The yellow dots that they can, if I pick up a piece of paper, I can figure out it was printed by you. Did you know that? Did you know I can know that you printed that piece of paper with some yellow dots, Gumwoo? Are you scared yet?
I guess.
Sorry, this has been something that's bothered me for probably 25 years, I think.
But
I think since I was like 9 or 10 years old.
So like, yeah, this is I have the same reaction to like when I found out about DNA barcoding. Like, my God, holy shit! Like, why?
Every piece of paper you're looking at it, you don't even notice it, but there's this little bit of yellow, and there's a dot matrix, and it tells you what your IP address is, where you're from. It's so much worse than you can think. It's your printer is spying on you. Okay,
Jesus
every
Christ.
one of you, I want you to know this. Your printer is spying on you, and I want you to stop them. And the only way to do it is to have a printer that doesn't do this. And so let me go through a list of printers that have dots and just show you. Yeah, your brother, your Canon, your Dell, your Epson, this one that says unclear, it's got dots. Okay. Hewlett Packard, yeah, maybe Color Jet 2250, but I doubt it. I think the question mark proves if HP's doing it, they must have some new technology to do it. I have a couple of the laser jets that supposedly don't, and I'm still convinced that they're doing something. You want to go down and find yourself, as far as I'm considering, the best printer is an Oki
Jesus
Data.
Christ, the fact that you
Data
can
printers.
find IP address from
if you have a printer, you want to trash it, and you're going to want to sell it to some other stooge who doesn't even mind. Someone who just got vaccinated the other day, just sell them your old printer and get yourself an Oki Data. Now, look at the no. That's my eyes are up here. No yellow dots. Get the Oki Land if you want. Yeah, Oki Data is the only printer I can think of that I actually would trust at this point. I mean, so yeah, that's my little rant about printers, but be careful.
Hell yeah, I'm glad you told me. Holy shit. For future businesses, I'll definitely use Oki.
Oh man, and just in general, like, be really careful with anyone that is giving you chipped ink, because these chipped cartridges are not safe, and that's your biggest area of vulnerability. You might have the greatest network.
Are they graphene chipping the ink too?
Oh man, it's just that the laser jet and the inkjet cartridges have a chip in them to tell you that they're HP or not. But that chip can be a liar, and that chip can sign unexecuted code. Right. And you might have the greatest security system in America, and all of a sudden your printer is your way in. And so I'm assuming that's what's going on with a lot of these businesses, or government agencies. This is a big
in the early 2000s, within like IT forums, it was already a known fact within within the community, within the hacking community, that like printers are extremely fucking vulnerable, which is why we had like years of Tumblr memes of people hacking printers. Yeah, or, like printing the entire fucking Shrek script and shit.
Do you have any thoughts on Super Bowl?
No, but I wanted to mention that like this the tangent we went to on one about printing, like on
Yeah.
the topic of the elites recycling old plans, this just reminds me of what happened with the Gothenburg printing press and how the Vatican took over. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you know, in the Soviet Union, it was illegal to own a copy machine or typewriter without
Really?
government license and authorization, and each one had to be registered, and it would do an indent into the page that as you twisted it to show that it was your printer, so
But
they
the
could
thing
figure
is,
out where a
like,
document came from. Same thing.
what is the point in doing this shit? Like, why?
To
Stop.
know who's thinking what, bruh.
And like,
I
what
mean,
are you gonna? The amount of
if you own those thoughts, you can exploit them. They're actually, I don't think, trying to arrest you as much as use your thoughts for free.
right. They're trying to like reap intellectual property. The whole IP war. The whole thing. Like, Andrew Yang was fucking campaigning about. He brought the whole IP conversation into the limelight, but I only dabbled into that shit for quite a bit. But yeah, like if you want to talk about that more.
Well, the thing that bothers me about the idea of tracking is that remember when the 2016 election happened and even the 2020 QAnon thing, like people started posting on Facebook, and I do this now. I see a post, I might make a post and then see it a month later, someone's sending it back to me, not aware that I made the thing originally, or I've seen the post, I didn't share it, and then like a month later, I see this person share it, then I see that person share it, then we see grandma share it, and the idea of being able to see how information spreads, how fast it spreads through which groups of people, because they really tried to get people down to like 120 people. They had this idea that you can really only interact with 120 people. So we're going to try to keep your interactions with a tight network. They tried to force tight networks on people. Even if you had bigger followings, like these 120, what does that do? It breaks it apart because people get sick and seeing the same thing.
Right.
So you end up with these isolated pools where it takes 6 months for some people to find out some information, a year for other people. Some people that's what they're studying. That's what they're interested in. How long it takes you to find out.
Fuck. So like, I guess we're on the cutting edge of like pattern recognition then.
Oh God. I mean, I'm like sitting there as Shinzo Abe is shot. I'm not in Japan literally.
Right.
But I might as well be. That's how I feel. You know what I mean? I'm there as things are happening.
So senior year of high school, 2016. My mom left to Korea to take because my grandmother was dying, and my dad was out at work all the time.
Hey, Jacob stopped in. Did you take your kids to see that Burger King guy?
Yeah, show them, Max. Hold on. You're going to see. They are now, all three of them, burger royalty.
Oh, my gosh. But that's not that.
Goodness. So royal that they possess paper hats out of recycled material. We're very thoughtful that way.
But they're not the Apologia Studios, Jeff Durbin kind of Burger Kings. They're just the happy Burger Kings, right?
He's the wannabe. My kids are now the real royalty.
They're the real ones.
Even the little guy, he was able to consume 2 patties with fake chemical cheese. And so as kosher as bacon is, we got it all.
My word.
Hell yeah.
Well, kids, your dad loves you, but be careful eating that stuff. That stuff's dangerous. Your dad's great.
All you need though is all you can do is just like a gut cleanse, and it just reverses the everything.
Oh yeah, try to get a 10-year-old to do a gut cleanse.
I'm just poisoning them. For me, I just had no sugar today, some organic sausages with stone ground mustard.
Why are you feeding your kids?
Kids, why don't
they've got to learn the hard way.
Alpha as fuck.
Oh my word! Don't use that language. There's children in the car, buddy.
Oh shit! Yeah, make them join the Marines.
He's in the Marines. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
He's trying so hard, but they yelled at him as a kid. I'm sorry. Well, I was gonna ask you about this, I guess, but maybe I'll save that one for a minute.
Wait, what? Illegals hidden where?
Well, this is kind of interesting. In the airports now, they're finding that there's like back sides of airports where they have entirely different security systems going on, so they can use
For
these
human
airports
trafficking, yeah.
so they can traffic. Well, you make it sound like that, Gunwoo. I don't know. I mean,
this has been known by the FBI since 1986. I have the New York Times article on this shit.
you
Yeah,
might
this has
not
been
be able
known.
to do the show for long if he keeps using those language, Jacob.
My God, I kept telling people
I'm
since
totally
the Obama
supportive.
years.
I
Go ahead.
might have to join you just a few more minutes, just because I can tell that my internet connection is laggy.
Okay. All right.
So
I'm going to use this as an excuse to let you get your kids to a safe place before Gunwoo opens his sailor mouth.
But I'm going to be tuning in to make sure that I'm up to date if I'm able to jump back on.
Oh, you got to do it. God bless you.
Yeah.
See you in a minute. All right.
Hell yeah.
I love Jacob. Jacob's got high energy. I like that about Jacob. He's great. But yeah, no, go on. Go ahead. Curse like a sailor to Gunwoo. Tell us about how this makes you feel as a Korean and an American. Go ahead.
But yeah, no, just like so, like my conspiracy introduction to conspiracy. Sorry, I got red pilled, quote unquote, 2007 of the Obama years, just watching fucking unsolicited YouTube videos on fucking 9/11. And then eventually
I'm gonna take you to church one day just to hear you try to talk a sentence without. Keep going.
But yeah, and then eventually led me to like the Illuminati rabbit hole. So I got like fucking like hard red pill during the Obama years. And since then, I've been telling people, they're like, hey, fucking our government traffics people. And like, you know, the whole Epstein's, I didn't know Epstein at the time, but I knew this shit was going on within Hollywood. Alex Jones was talking about it since 2001. And I've been telling my entire friend circles and whatever. And then like, you know, how every airport was in on it, and with fucking the Denver airport conspiracy shit. Yeah, man. And then like next thing you know, fucking everything's just out in the open.
But yeah, so doesn't that make you more like likely to sensationalize this idea? And maybe we need to look at it like from the perspective of, this is an airport. We're bringing people from one place to another. We don't want them to accidentally get out of the airport here. They're just literally being brought, and we have decided that they're not allowed to the rest of the United States, but we're going to bring these illegal immigrants to a Walmart in Texas for Donald Trump. I don't know. Like, what is the, we're always jumping to the idea that it's super sinister, but if there's that many people working in the airport, don't you think, am I now being
the thing is,
complacent-minded person?
Like coming from the mill, like being a, you know, I hate to pull this card, but like, you know, being a military background, seeing how government, you know,
do any of my guests not curse? Yeah, tons of. That's why I brought the Mormons in. Keep going.
So having experienced firsthand how you can break people into just complacency, and like just to the extent where like they're willfully ignorant of their situation, just trying to get by on a paycheck. You can definitely like have, you know, just pay these like minimum wage TSA workers hush money to easily traffic whatever, to make this whole look like an official operation of, oh, we're just migrants, whatever, when in reality these are like Puerto Rican kids.
Okay, but Puerto Rican kids are Americans, and so aren't Puerto Ricans allowed to just go wherever they want anyway? They are. Like, that's what, you know, I find one of the biggest issues, like the real issue is the Philippines.
Right,
the Philippines is the example where,
and I hate to say it, and like one of the biggest proprietors of that's operating the human trafficking network in the Philippines are the Koreans, unfortunately. If you didn't know about that.
You guys mean well, but yeah, no, I mean, don't pickle people anymore. That's not okay. With the Philippines, though, it was an example where we talked about this the other day. For some reason, Roosevelt went to the Philippines, the Battle of Manila, the mock Battle of Manila. They faked a battle. They paid the Spanish. They used blanks, not like the ones in the Rust movie with Alec Baldwin. These ones literally didn't hurt people. Anyway, the Philippines were then conquered and liberated, and in the United States newspapers are like, what do? We can't make them a state because they're different looking, which I find to be very strange. But that's the beginning.
Winston Churchill called them a lesser race, yeah.
Filipinos invented ketchup and when it didn't have tomatoes, when it used to be a mushroom fish sauce.
No, I fucking love Filipinos and their food, man. Oh my
God. I love Filipinos. I love them. I love them so
much. I'm just pointing out the fact that Winston
American.
Churchill himself said these people are lesser people, yeah.
Right, but he was British, and so where does that
Exactly.
place him on the evolutionary scale? Slaps knee. Okay, the Philippines were the example where we're not going to make him a state, and that was where we started to become an empire. And it's a very interesting idea that the empire is the United States, so we the people owned they the people,
right?
And that's crazy. So we had to figure out who's going to be in charge of our people so that they could own us and them. First owning other people for us, then owning us. I mean, it all comes from the Philippines. But we talk about open borders like they're the antithesis of freedom. I don't know if I believe that. I do acknowledge I prefer being in a country that has a border. For whatever reason, if I spend 6 hours waiting to get into Disneyland and all of a sudden you're in Bosnia, you had to go through the security. There's these scary cops and you're in all of a sudden Bosnia feels great. It feels safe. It feels on the other side of evil. You know what I mean? But open borders has made my life pretty great to be able to go to different countries and do different things. And it isn't very logical the way we do borders because we're building walls when we should be tracking people. Is that not correct? We look at this idea of a wall that you can get through, whereas everyone's holding the phone in their pocket. It's so easy, it seems. You could just track where people are on the planet rather than tracking, whether or not they crossed this particular border or they went around it or under it or something. And that's what the Biden administration did, right? They gave out cell phones. Everyone was upset at it. But isn't that more logical? Like to let borders just like at this point, what is it that really you think we are protecting by having borders? Like, do we still have anything left to protect with a border?
I've never thought about this actually. Holy shit. Do we have anything left to protect? Well, definitely it.
I don't mean that like because we shouldn't. I'd
right,
love it if we did. Like, we're not Bosnia.
Right. So the thing is,
protect jobs. Abbott Hoffman wants to protect. Are you picking strawberries, Abbott? Tell me all about the strawberry.
No. Okay, so hold on. I'm thinking more.
Okay.
I'm thinking more so in terms of what does the border do as a function, right? Like what so
creates jobs.
No, so okay, so there's a whole community of people within this country that politically align with out of sympathy that we should help these people migrate in. They want our gerbs.
Bro, if you're picking strawberries and avocados in Oxnard, let's hang out. That sounds like my kind of day. That's awesome.
Right. But the thing is, well, we're essentially what I'm trying to get to cut this short is our border is protecting homogeneous efficiency and work productivity.
Happening? Homogeneous
from collapsing.
Protecting homogeneous productivity. Say it again.
Protecting homogeneous productivity, and
our borders are protecting that.
Yeah. So
like an open city where people can come and work. Isn't that homogenizing effectivity? Because you've got a city that's constantly people like New York City. People get old, they leave. Better cops come in. Better engineers come in.
No, the thing is, it takes like hundreds of years of history to confederize.
Don't spin it that way, Brittany. It's not necessary. It just happened that way. All right.
Yeah, it takes like hundreds of years to confederize, random groups of people into a civic union where they're at a symbiotic relationship. But if we throw in constant recycle constantly of new cultures, new whatever, eventually, like not even being racist here, it's just like it just won't work. It just the cohesion falls apart. The language barrier, everything becomes cyberpunk 2077, but except we don't have the technology to decipher all languages, so we just have racial tension. And so what I was getting at, so remember the migrant crisis that we saw during in Europe post 2008. That every conservative was initially freaking out. So we have the follow-up of the Bush era Islamophobia psyops that we got to propagate the Iraq War, and then that lunged over the Obama era because Obama was supposedly a Muslim, and then so Islamophobia was huge then. So the Fox News cycle is running the whole shit about the refugee crisis. But the thing is, we now finally have data points on what the refugee crisis has done to Europe as a whole, before introduction of migrants and after, and it's completely capitulated their work if we're talking like purely on like a sociopathic standpoint, let's say we're CEOs and we're all we care about is money, right? From a purely like that from that standpoint, it has capitulated work productivity and desire to work by 60, sometimes even 80%, which is why we're seeing such a panic within the EU and they're trying to restructure their economy, and a bunch of fucking countries collapsing across.
Wait, elaborate on that. So you're saying in the EU, where there's been a lot of migrant work and people coming in, so that's actually causing economic problems?
Right, yeah.
And why? Because why is that the case?
I don't specifically know why. I just read I just seen the the data sheets and whatever being shared on Twitter, and then eventually just like saw the sites and whatever. But then,
workers being paid lower than promised
right.
salaries.
I'm assuming it's just
this is why I'm not against I'm for open borders. I'm just for documentation, because I think documentation protects the worker. Okay,
right.
do I sound Marxist enough for you? By the way, Seth's here.
The
God
thing
bless
is,
you,
but the issue with documentation from a libertarian standpoint, right, from a true American patriotic spirit, a documentation is infringement on constitutional rights. We shouldn't be restricted to passports. But
yeah, okay, but passports. So that's interesting. Seth, you just joined us. We're talking about open borders. A bunch of people are upset
but the
because
thing is,
illegal immigrants are being brought through. I'm sorry, no, undocumented workers are being brought through these airports, and the question arises: couldn't we just have at this point an open border? What are we left to protect? Hasn't it all been taken from us anyway? And shouldn't we be focusing on documentation?
But
like
the thing is,
the
acceptance of the demoralization of our current state of the current state of affairs, is exactly the hand that they want you to play towards, of just complete compliance, of complacency, because whatever because we couldn't find an alternative, and
Billy the Kid was this Jewish bank robber from New York City who moved to Texas. And when they asked him in Texas, like, why are you here? And it's like, basically, why are you robbing banks? Like, well, that's where all the money is. He was brilliant. He could speak like 6 languages. He could speak Spanish, English. He could speak French. He could do whatever he needed to do to get by. He ended up leaving New York City, because he became famous there having banking debts. And you move to a new town where they don't have documentation of you, right? And so you just keep doing that until eventually you're world documented.
So like,
right?
okay, you're right. So the thing is, this whole ties in this. What I'm playing the devil's advocate for is tying into the whole sovereign citizens area and movement. I'm talking from their perspective, right? The documentation and gun regulation in general is an infringement upon the fact that we are just free. We should be free people. But as we mentioned earlier, how laissez-faire is just embellished in too much idealism to actually work. So I do appreciate your perspective of documentation and order, right? But then eventually that leads too much of a leeway for authoritarianism.
I would like it if every militia shared an online database with each other at their discretion. If a group from Texas shared their database, their local militia, with another group from the New York City, we would replace the NYPD with the NY militia. And they would send records if they said, okay, by the way, the guy who just left. And so in circumstances like that, they could, if they wanted to, work together, unless they didn't want to.
But the issue is, like, this idea is too idyllic. It's too big tech. You're not accounting for the lowest possible common denominator, and how you need to fail proof this thing if you want this to work, especially in America. Like, holy shit, this country has a lot of problems, man. So you have to.
How hard do you think it? Go ahead, Seth.
So yeah, it sounds pretty fascinating. Let me sum up to make sure I'm on the same page with you. Andreas, you're kind of leaning towards kind of like documenting everyone and just regulating from the documentation standpoint.
Yeah.
And Gungwoo, you're more in line with more rigid borders.
Yeah, rigid borders, but more freer citizens.
And so the
Like,
citizens
so
can leave.
I'm
but
playing
people-
I'm playing the devil's advocates on the perspective of libertarians that I hear a lot about.
So if they're not documenting what's going on because they're in a forum, they've already been allowed into the forum. It's like you're in Disneyland, you don't have to pay any more than you already have. What do you mean? You know?
So what a lot of conservatives have in mind is they want a state, the idyllic state of America they want is a de jure republic first and foremost, but also a state where like everybody like lives by like a barter social contract, where essentially everything is it's unregulated, but there's kind of like this social peer pressure to kind of regulate things, which is what both the left and the right I hear which so on the left's perspective, they want, like as we've seen with Chaz, the autonomous zone. So like the people from their end of this argument, I see a lot of I hear them talking about some similar concepts, but I'm not too sure how this will work out, but you know
that's what I mean. I don't see a
Right.
practical way to stop technology from moving forward. The idea that everything is going to be observed and that people can register, record that, and that information will probably either be shared or stolen, it seems more likely to me than being able to keep a wall up around the entire city state, let alone nation state, let alone, world. I guess you got an ice wall, but other than that, how can you do it?
Right. Thing is, I'm not a politician.
Sorry,
sorry,
Andreas, if you take your argument to the logical conclusion, are you basically promoting like a global citizen ID, and we can keep track of the movement? This citizen is transferring from this locale to this locale, and like
I think I think it could arise naturally. So I don't think you need to give every citizen when they're birthed a social security number unless you're trying to own them. But I do think that if people do things that they get that those things are observed at a certain point, it's going to be impossible for a large language model or recursive neural net not to be able to see this person went here and did that. And so it's going to become almost impossible to have pure anonymity. And so that would be, I think, a better replacement than a border anyway. Because the border, like you've got right now, like I'm from California, half of California is in Mexico. It's not that like there's a border under California. It's that Baja California and California Norte are divided. And so to this idea that the New English, East Coast American have that California is not Mexican is a farce. And the idea that part of Mexico isn't in America is a farce. And just even disregarding the history of how America conquered Mexico, destroyed Maximilian's Mexico, because of the Monroe document, destroyed the French occupation of Mexico, we got to a point where Mexico couldn't run itself without Vicente Fox's Bush family and who's the Mormon one again? The Mormon Mexican guy. Mitt Romney. The Romneys in Mexico. Yeah. So like the de facto Mexico that we have isn't Mexico because it's not including Norte California. So we've got this North Korea, South Korea thing going on with a border in between it. And you've got people on both sides who have citizenship from both sides, who are family members from both sides. And they look enough alike that they could probably change passports, but they don't need to because they have tunnels. They have government side roads. It's just the ubiquitousness of having both passports. Mm-hmm. Oh, we lost him for a second. But.
Yeah. So like earlier, I was like, I had to go back to this, but earlier I was like way too high and stuttering to make my proper point. But I just thought of so from an immigrant standpoint, I definitely have noticed that within conservative suburban areas, or not just suburban, just conservative areas within the United States, especially the South, there's an expectation within the community that's it's an unspoken expectation that you feel that people that people should act right. You know, this idyllic 1950s image of the American dream of white picket fence suburban Americans that everyone acts orderly according to their own will, right? That like there's no crime, everything is clean. It's the suburbia that people have imagined. That is essentially the conservative dream that people still latch on to as of today. That they refer back to, which is why we have sentiments like "Make America Great Again," right?
Yeah, I don't know though, because like America great again, right? Like I'm a big fan of habeas corpus.
Right, but
I think habeas corpus is all you need.
I'm saying the border essentially exists as a concept to protect that.
Yeah, I don't think it works. Like so
I know,
again,
yeah,
like,
of course it doesn't work, which is why it's failing currently.
I think it's weird that the right has taken the side of the borders because the borders are not actually protecting their interests. And so it's like it's kind of a weird argument that they're making. And it makes more sense to focus on habeas corpus. If you find it's kind of like if someone's walking down the street and they're belligerent, right? There shouldn't be a law against you being belligerent unless you're like belligerent to the point of causing harm or disruption. Maybe there should be a level where society is impacted by you. So habeas corpus is there to protect. Like we don't need all of these gratuitous laws about who is from where or why, because those laws are essentially Jim Crow laws.
Right.
They're saying that this person isn't allowed to be here because of the way they look. I don't really care how you look. I want to know that you're not a criminal. I've seen way more local people become criminals than immigrants in Los Angeles, for instance.
Right? Yeah.
So we need to look at it more along the lines of if someone commits a crime, I don't care who they are or where they are. I do care about their inalienable rights. Right. I think that we could do that.
But in that case, should we return this country back into a colony? Because that is the only way that would work.
A colony? Why?
Yeah, so we would remove all the borders. Let's in a hypothetical situation, and then we would return the Americas back into an uncolonized, or a colonized, or a colony, essentially.
No, I don't think so. I think that you just have to do it the same way every city does it. Like cities don't care; they just want people doing the work. The cities get overrun with so many people, they don't even really value an individual, right? And as those people get older, they leave because they can't compete. And someone else younger comes in and takes their place, and that city keeps going. And if you just did that, the only real difference is you decide who is the legitimate source of violence. Because if someone breaks the law in Mexico, then you have to allow the Mexican government to extract justice. You can't just pull them out and bring them back to where they were born. But the only way that works is if you respect everyone's if everyone's in some sort of an IGO, I guess, you respect their legal system.
Yeah.
You're muted, Seth. Oh yeah, sorry.
But the thing is, when I mentioned that we should return back to a colony is because I mean that's essentially how it operated back then, right? This land was neutral territory, no borders, right? And we could just come in. People had their own settlements, which were cities, right? And just did whatever.
So delegitimize the source of violence, like to remove the state from the equation entirely.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know, because the thing is, you still.
But the thing is, who would uphold the law is the issue. So which is why I say return to this country.
Well, if you did that, then you would have militias. It would have to be participatorily run by the locals, and the mercantile class would have to provide.
But as we see with fucking Chaz, bro, fucking militias ain't gonna work, man.
Well, let's think about Chaz. Actually, is Chaz not working? Because I don't know.
Chaz has completely flopped in on himself. What are you talking about?
Let's talk about Chaz. What's going on in Chaz? I mean, it sounds like they've got an effective, they have an effective anti-fascist zone, right? Is that correct? Like the government, police do not go in there. They've controlled it.
They try to establish, essentially an anarcho commune state or a zone within the capital of Seattle. And which is essentially completely the dream flopped in.
Trouble in paradise.
Yeah, and it ended up becoming an authoritarian state, much worse.
Wait, that wasn't the goal? I thought that was it. I thought that they were trying to build a Biden deep state narco trafficking run and financed like cartel community. It's another cartel community like they have in Mexico, but up north.
That's probably what they said on Twitter, but like, I mean, in reality, they could barely grow fucking potatoes. So, no.
So they went a little too socialist.
So pause for a second. Are we debating the utility of anarchism right now?
No. So we're
if
debating.
You want, wait. If you have thoughts on that, I'm hearing them.
No. So hold on. Before we go off on a different tangent, I want to stay on topic. We're debating the efficacy of modern militias today. Entrusting the lowest common denominator of Americans to the right
So
of
I don't think
self-defense.
of it as anarchy. So my belief is that there's like 2 social services that are essential. Maybe 4. Okay, lighthouses are one. You got to count lighthouses because if boats crash, there's no commerce. But you could say that education is the government decided education was important. What they meant was militias. Originally, the idea was that in your community you have access to a library, you have access to defense articles and tools and weapons. You have training from someone who's in the community that teaches you that. And because of that, you're giving back, because if the federal alliance ever needed to, the confederated militias they're organized. They're regulated. What regulated means is like an oil in an engine. The engine's well regulated. It's a running militia ready to go when we need it. So I think that's the original way things were intended, and it only requires education, because education, we put 3D printers and guns in libraries, and then we're problem solved.
But the thing is, I say this stuff in the perspective of having, having been in the
a
military.
Marine, yeah.
Right. I've talked to
Fair
bro
enough.
No, I've been immersed within the right wing, essentially, within the gun culture, whatnot. I've been around bro-vets, been around conservatives, been around like absolute nut jobs.
You don't want them running the country either. Okay.
Right. No, I'm just saying the current. I'm very cynical about the current. I hate to be so negative all the time, but like the current state of the American right that would actually rise up to become militias, or who are even remotely fit to being a militia, are just in such ideological shambles, intellectually and politically, that I do not see any form of cohesion arising anytime soon.
Just a reminder that John Podesta did just take over for John Kerry as top international advisor on climate change. So just what you're dealing with here, remember both sides. But okay.
Right. So I don't know how to properly word this. I'm incredibly stoned as well.
No, you think they're going to be this guy, I swear. If you're gonna try to get a militia to work with other militias,
no. So like
Seth has got some bad internet. Otherwise, he'd be jumping at it a bit, I feel like.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, dude. I'm trying to figure out what's going on because I'm getting piecemeal. I'm not getting the full story here, but it sounds like you're skeptical of the military's ability to take over the country.
No. The citizens' ability to self-govern and be as a militia.
So you're skeptical of
that will be lawful
militia.
I am extremely skeptical that a lawful militia would persist to exist and not be corrupted by any authoritarian agenda.
Well, yeah, they're already corrupted, and there's layers of bureaucracy, right?
And not only that, majority of the male population within America, they're remotely interested in holding a gun, right? They're either sociopaths, belligerently racist, or we're just boomers or LARP. It's just such an array of different ideologies, communities, and backgrounds. I'm not saying they're all bad. I myself, I'm a gun-toting lover as well. So I'm pro Second Amendment all the way. But at the same time, I'm very much self-aware of the people I affiliate with. These people are fucking insane. I
used to be a right-winger. I was raised Mormon, and I was raised in a very right-wing household. And when I was a lot younger, over a decade ago, I got sucked into the feedback loop of the right-wing media. And, it just loops you down to these conspiracies where all of a sudden you're like Barack Obama is the spawn of evil. He's going to destroy America. He needs to
that's
go.
The thing.
That's the logical conclusion of those ideologies.
Whereas I grew up with in California with lesbian parents, not really, but I'm just kidding. But if you had the difference of opinion that you're telling me a militia doesn't work, and I'm told that gangs in Chicago are good for you. So I don't know. I'm on the other side of this. I feel like what we need are more armed black men running around. I can't connect. I'm trying. But I mean, right? Because if you think about it, you talked earlier about the organized crime of the mafia, and it's no, those are just militias. Those are generationally invested people that love your community, probably more than you. To be honest, not everybody, but a lot of the time that's the case. I mean, in Mexico, it's sure as heck true that the cartels love their country. You cannot pretend for a second that the cartels are somehow anti-Mexican, right? No one's going to say that on TV. So the idea that they're running the government better than John Podesta, Kerry, and all these other characters that we're looking at, that keeps coming up. And I can't help but think that the problem isn't that we need like more. It's not that we need less militias. It's clearly that if there were more militias, then they would interact with each other more. And maybe even they would have like that, you know, cops do that, like World Cop games, and they send British cops to America. But maybe we could send militias shadow day, like at school, with each other. And I think that militias are great because every small community then gets to decide what they think in their community is right and wrong, to the extent of, as long as they're following this constitutional, more important than the Constitution is the inalienable rights.
Okay, I need to bring to the table the concept of the multipolar trap, and you guys need to address this for me.
Please do, Mr. Dugan.
Absent a refutation of the multipolar trap, this sounds insane. So basically, the problem is when you have competing interests, it turns into internecine conflict, right? If you have two tribes, then they're competing for resource eternally. It's a tit for tat cycle. You play this out in software. The software is like, oh no, I steal a resource from you, and now I have to steal a resource from you. And this internecine conflict just keeps iterating over time, and you can't progress. And the only way, well, one of the ways traditionally through social evolution, the way to bind these multipolar traps is to implement a hierarchical authority. So when you have a judge, the judge says, hey, no, you're in the wrong. Stop the cycle of revenge. Pay him back for your crime, and we're ending this cycle, right? And so you get nested hierarchies. That's what we have with federalism. We've got the city hierarchy, we've got the state hierarchy, we've got the federal hierarchy, and each one is binding the others. We don't have Arizona declaring war on California for water rights because the federal state binds those local conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you bind it if you get
Cecil Rhodes, Division of Africa. So originally, when you looked at, most of you grew up in the 20th century in the late 90s. You saw movies about the Tutu and the Hutsi and Hotel Rwanda, and you're like, why? Why is Africa having so many fights with itself, right? I don't know if you were white. That's probably what you're asking. The reason is because Cecil Rhodes divided up Africa, okay? And what he did was he's like, I'm going to make a straight line here. I'm going to make a big straight line there. I'm going to make another one there. And this doesn't work for a lot of reasons. But one of them, aside from the fact that these are literally where resources are, so you might divide off, oh, this area here is huge, but there's water on the other side of that line, and there's no water. They're just in bad situations. So now immediately you're forcing these states to work with each other to provide resources to bring water from California to Florida. This is a Rhodesian conspiracy, a Rhodesian plan. The other issue is there were already people living here. This isn't the genocided post-AIDS Africa. There were plenty of African civilizations, matriarchies, tribes, and what they would do is they would put two tribes who had hated each other historically, but they lived on the other side of a mountain, so they didn't really have to deal with each other, and then they would make that a country. So now you've got an ethnic war that had been suppressed for thousands of years, right? Or they would take a tribe and then they divide them in half. So then there'd be half of them on one side of the country, the other side. So this is the other thing, is borders themselves were the problem. Borders are the thing that created the division in the first place. When before that, yeah, you had different tribes and people followed the rules. When you're in the master's domain, you follow the law of the master. When you're in Rome, you act as a Roman. But that goes away very quickly with borders, because now you're saying, well, we brought in an entire new population, and this country is, Belgium. You've got Dutch here, you've got French here. It's gonna be fine.
The thing is, sorry, just want to interrupt real quick. So this whole intersectional infighting that we're mentioning about like how these conflicting tribes, whatever, is connects to the point I made earlier about how the migrant crisis in Europe has destroyed civic homogeneity in Europe, destroying their productivity in the labor pool. Not just because of competing wages and like docking or whatever.
It's all the same everywhere.
No, it's just intersectional, racial tension, divide and conquer stuff that we've been seeing all throughout history. But we were seeing that the surplus of migrants of mixing all sorts of non-cohesive cultures together artificially within a border is also causing a problem.
Yeah, so you got people worshiping 3 or 4 different versions of the Abrahamic God, and they put a Baphomet up in their courthouse. I'm sorry, multipolarity, Seth, go.
So first of all, to Andreas's point, to me, I don't see how borders like solve the problem, or like the elimination of borders solve the problem. Like Native American tribes, my understanding is that they had lots of internecine conflict, but they didn't have borders. They would kind of migrate back and forth.
Right.
Like, hey, that's my holy mountain. I leave for a season, and now you invade my stuff.
What are you doing with her? Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, like the absence of border doesn't solve the multipolar trap. At least I can't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And then to Gungwoo's point, I feel like the interculture stuff, like multiple ways to take this. So like, are you guys familiar with Sapolsky's work on oxytocin?
No.
A little bit. Suicide.
Okay. So oxytocin is like, basically it's the tribal chemical / the mother chemical. So like when a mother gives birth, the mother secretes, like releases oxytocin, and that creates the bond, like the familial bond. And so
straight up Scientology.
When you're dealing with family, when you're dealing with tribe, you're creating that oxytocin feeling. And there's a oxytocin, it's a double-edged sword, which means when you have oxytocin, I will fight for you, I will die for you because you're my flesh and blood. So it's like, I love you and I hate anything that's opposed to you. Anything that threatens you, I will destroy.
So essentially, oxytocin is the root of racism.
Right, exactly. And so I think, but the studies of oxytocin, you can trick your brain into creating oxytocin in a non-familial context, right? So human oxytocin is flexible. For example, like sports teams, right? If you're a fan of whatever sports team, if you see someone wearing the insignia of your team, it's like, boom, oxytocin, we're the same team. No genetic relationship. It's a purely socially constructed tribe, right? And so the idea is humanity can transcend racism if we can build an idea, if we can build a flag. Like, so when we isolate, it's like, okay, we're just genetic tribes. But like maybe by working together, it's like we got a company. This is the company tribe.
Look how Tartarian this panel looks right now. You know, exactly.
Or the military. Would you say the military is a tribe that reduces racism in the group?
No, not in the slightest. It perpetuates it. Even worse. Damn. Oh my God.
Oh, man, you just picked up some trauma that he's been trying to heal. Yeah.
Ah, shit.
No, but I think that the military, I do think they do in a sense, because one of the things, I mean, tell me, go move him wrong. I think that one of the levels is it reinforces it by making fun of race, because you're like, these are the things about you that are different. In fact, you might not have a name without those differences. And at first you're just looking at someone like, hey, Asian, hey, black, you know, I mean, literally in the military,
no, not at all.
No, worse or better?
I'm sorry to cut you off like this.
Go.
The situation really is like we have bottom of the barrel, like the lowest denominator of each race being represented in a one group, forced to work together in the most stressful, toxic work environment ever. And like
that sounds like a Gestalt therapy trip to me.
So what happens is, when everybody is in that panic state trying to work together, when there's literal language barriers due to the different clashes of backgrounds, that like stereotypes become theatrically hyperbolized.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
And so it just enforces racism.
Wait, but isn't that at a certain point? See, to me, I would think you do that, and then eventually you get to the point where you would die for each other. Does that not happen? Because like the whole thing is you start with all the differences about you until you become part of the tribe. And when you're part of the tribe, all those things don't matter as much anymore, because now I'll die for you.
That's the dream that your people being sold to enlist in the military. But essentially what's actually happening in reality is people becoming demoralized about the state of this nation.
I can think about 6 people that would die for you, Gunwoo. I know that, including Jesus. No, you're right, though. The military is filled with the bottom of the barrel all the time. I think that's kind of a sad truth, and it might make it harder. But you don't think that you made friends in the military? Don't you have friends still?
Oh yeah,
friends?
I definitely have
Are
made
they
like
all Korean? You know?
no.
Yeah.
I mean,
So okay.
so like decent, level-headed people I've met that maintained to like a relationship with. But you know, for the most part, God, I just like I've met people that've never met Asians before, and it was just like the hardest thing to come across.
Totally.
It's just like, and like there were like it's like certain cases, right? Like where we're like someone's in a bad mood. We're like let's say you have a person that's never seen an Asian before. They're having a shit day because their wife is cheating or whatever, and they come to work, and then I'm also having a shit day, and like because whatever, and then we kind of butt heads at work. Next thing you know, it's a fucking just projection of all our insecurities out the window.
Really?
Yeah, and then like, it's just because of shit fest of like whatever, or like
See, but right now that same Marine is in Nebraska somewhere telling a kid, Asian people are actually pretty great, and so it happens. I think that's the real thing. I get that there's a lot of horrible things that you go through, but I'm constantly convinced that people interacting with each other opens them up in a way.
Right.
The fact that he never met you before, he was lesser, and now he's more. I think that even with you meeting some of these people, you might have actually gained some wisdom from their ignorance. It happens.
Yeah, that's definitely the human like a component to it for sure. And like you look back at your memories of suffering and like in a fun way for some reason. But also like it
How about
enforced
gays and transgender? Get to that subject.
yeah,
soon.
that's the thing. It enforced a lot of negative stereotypes because people would like exploit the position that their identity is in, utilizing identity politics for self gain, and also like in certain cases for the suffering of others. Like I've seen women literally fake a rape report all the way through court just because they didn't want to work with a certain individual because they were ugly.
No, dude, that's so messed up.
Like shit like that, man. It's like it turns people racist or like misogynistic. Like you see if the cases like that over and over.
Can't
again.
understand like why some person would do this.
Would
thing.
do
they
such
have
a
to
thing,
make an excuse,
and eventually it becomes a traumatic moment where you just associate the race with the moment, and you become racist.
All right, well, we're near like 2 hours already. I'm gonna try to go a little extra because I want to cover this subject, but I wanted to talk a bit about gays and trans in the church because I don't know why. It just seems kind of interesting to me. I'm sorry. There's
boy,
Jacob Hansen. I'm gonna talk about him for himself, right? Like, there's just so many things open right here. I'm just closing.
What is
legend
this?
himself.
I tried so hard to like. Where is the picture? I had it somewhere. Okay, here he is looking like a sad Jacob Hansen. Okay, and I just want to go through what's been going through his life. Kind of. I'm gonna start with the meme.
This is the soy jack version.
Tell me, Anakin, are you familiar with the LGBTQ plus? I thought not. It was not a tale. It's not a tale the LDS would tell. They can change the rules to suit their desires, while others cannot even drink coffee. Is it possible to learn this power? Not from the LDS. So this has been this week. I mean, it's not a huge deal to me. By the way, you see that Mr. Beast is doing a deal with the Mormon church group JustServe.org. He's going to put millions of dollars into the philanthropy through the Mormon church. So stuff's happening, but Jacob Hansen's been like defending this idea that the church is against gay marriage because marriage is about producing babies. I think it's an alchemical reason. And I think that's the reason. Do you think that that's not the reason? Because you kind of laughed at that, Seth?
I mean, I feel like that's a little bit of a funny caricature of it, but like there's probably a large amount of truth to it. Like I don't think he would frame it that way personally. But
there's
like,
a lot of nuances for sure. There's a lot of nuances.
Man. I want to talk to him more about this, but how do you think?
I know it's just for babies. Yeah, I know.
No, but how would you think he cares about it? Because he does care.
Okay, like if you try to like put on your theological cap and you're like, I'm gonna like coat this and like all the divine glory we can do. It's like, oh well, this is like their attempt at moral perfection. This is this is progression towards godhood. We are, we've fallen, and we have to improve, and like yin and yang, marriage is a covenant. It's an eternal process. We learn from each other, we fix each other's faults, and we progress towards godhood, and that's how we become Mormon gods and reign over universes.
Yeah, but even Jacob Hansen's trying to go from a St. Thomas Aquinas approach, and he's looking at alchemy. It seems like he's trying to justify it from a consequentialist value as well. It's not just to him. I mean, even that was a very practical explanation why two people from the opposite sex work well together. But I mean, is it not that he's falling into this idea of gender as sex stereotype? It's a social stereotype, what women do, what men do, and he's worried more about that than the actual thing, which is like baby making, and that's even about to go away with transhumanism.
So I feel like at Mormon, when it comes to like LGBT stuff, I think that the fundamental instinct, right, like there's multiple layers of logic, and if you like go all the way down to like the core beliefs, like they think that homosexuality and all of this deviancy, right? All this sexual deviancy is satanic, it's evil, and it's corrosive to society. They think it's going to lead to the destruction of humanity. And that's why they're against it. It's like, we have to establish boundaries. We can't let you marry. We have to make you feel repressed. We don't want you in the public because this is going to corrupt everyone and we're going to go downhill.
Well,
so
another thing I want to add is like, I'm not speaking from a Jacob Hansen.
No
like,
worries.
But I'm adding addition to
but you have met a white person before. So.
No, I'm adding on to another esoteric perspective that I've heard, that like sexual deviancy is largely frowned upon, not just because of whatever theological reason there may be, but rather because of actual net negative health effects. Because like I mentioned this in a previous stream as well. Back then, people died of diarrhea. Imagine and you can get in the modern day, you can get hepatitis C from anal sex. So can you imagine what they would have gone through if butt fucking was just free?
Yeah, but again, we're living in the 21st century where so I posted in Jacob's thoughtful thoughtful saints room, if a genetically modified human were to asexually produce, would you consider their offspring A, soulless and unable to receive the Holy Spirit, which is in their own terminology, or God gives everybody a chance regardless, God will give them a soul? So I feel like if they're using their own logic, 85% of them, which isn't, I don't know how many people it is, but it's still enough, 7 votes, not a lot of votes. Still, you get my point. I think that a lot of people do think that if a clone were born, it would have a soul. And if that clone came from a single sexual reproduction, that's kind of how that works, right? It's not, so we're very close to meeting them. We're about to meet clones, and you're going to tell a clone to his face he doesn't have a soul?
The thing is, there's the Gnostic perspective of Adam being technically a golem because he was made from clay, and Eve reproduced parthenogenically. Yeah. There's that Gnostic perspective. So essentially, if we are the offspring of a golem and a parthenogenic lady, then essentially, and then we consider ourselves to have souls, then us being an offspring of essentially clones, then yeah, I guess clones would have souls.
Yeah,
I feel like they have to. Go ahead, Seth.
These guys claim to care about biology, but they don't really care about biology.
I can tell when I start talking about biology, and they all change the subject. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like back to the harmful side effects, right? They like to appeal to hormones are dangerous, and transitioning is mutilation.
Hormones are wicked awesome. Are you kidding me? Look at the 80s. Look at steroid muscle men. Tell me you don't want that back.
Dude, I want to stay pure.
You don't have to.
In my opinion, I think that it doesn't matter if butt sex was healthy. It doesn't matter if transitioning was healthy. They'd be against it because it goes against their most fundamental beliefs. It's just a convenient fact that, we found some negative side effects or etc. And we're going to utilize these to try to accomplish our lower level goals. Our fundamental goals.
I think it's going to be like in 20 years or 10 that the Mormon church is going to have to deal with the fact that there are clones, there are 2 Y chromosome parent offspring genetically produced, transhumanism is not going to be theoretical for many more days, months.
Oh man, yeah.
And so the fact that their whole argument is theoretical is why I'm so convinced it's going to fall apart. Because as soon as they are faced with practical evidence of this existence, then the first thing that they fall back on is to love. So it's unlikely that they're going to be able to say directly to someone's face, sorry, but your parents were the wrong genome, wrong human race, right? This kind of goes back to the priesthood ban. And so I don't know how long it'll last, this idea that they can keep out trans if at a certain point they can, with science, function the same way as everybody else, or at least enough. They can provide what society expects of an individual.
The thing is, from a theological standpoint, mainly a Christian one, essentially, we're us being made in the image of God, right? And any deviancy is seen as defacing the image of God, which is why it's considered blasphemy and sin. So, which is, then there's that perspective. But man, like, you're reminding me that like transhumanism is inevitable. It just dawned on me. Like I was keeping that out of my mind for the longest time.
I don't know why people do that. Like, why do people keep out what's happening?
Being blissfully ignorant, man. Like everybody, even the most studious conspiracy theorists fall towards that mental trap of like, man, I don't want to fucking be. I don't want to know this shit. Oh man,
you look kind of like Jacob Hansen does right now. He's like, oh, what are we gonna do? How can we go on like this? Kind of
just
a vibe.
Destroy China. That's our only solution.
I feel like
actualize MacArthur's dream and just cobalt bomb Beijing.
It's an interesting issue to me because it's like now you've got a group of people that are so about the way things were, and if this group moves beyond what they're gonna accept, are they gonna schism? Like, I can't imagine the most trad, like these guys are, what do you call it, where you're a party, you're inner party, like they're so tied to it.
Yeah.
For me personally, like, I'm sorry to cut you off, Seth. For me personally, like, I'm coming from like a third party perspective, like not even like religious, right? I just want like things to be left alone, man. Like, I'm tired of like shit in my food, in my water, in my fucking clothes. Just like, why the fuck do I have to deal with all this shit? Spend extra money to do, like, filtering out pollutants.
A little harder over there. No,
it's like, dude, come on, like.
Get a time machine, man. You're in the wrong timeline.
You gotta join the X Church. We're gonna say
this is not the timeline for like.
I just want organic fruit, bro. Like, the fuck is that so much to ask for?
Seth, you were about to say the village.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're making an excellent point about religion. Like, to the extent religion is based on like keeping tradition the same, right. all of these religions are screwed. We're in such a novel age. The ground is shifting beneath our feet on every dimension.
Albert Pike was right. Fuck.
Like, we're just getting started. Like, AI
I know.
I
have to live through this shit. Oh my god.
We're at the cusp of some major fucking transformations.
Oh my god.
Like, and usually,
I hope we survive. Fuck.
Evolutionarily, usually when things change too rapidly, creatures just go extinct. It's like, sorry, I wasn't built to adapt this much. I can only do this many adaptations per year. It's like, fuck me over with 1,000 adaptations.
Per generation, yeah.
And humans, we're like one of the best creatures at adapting quickly. Like, religion, in my opinion, is like our way of adapting faster than our genes. It's like, the genes, they can adapt over 100,000 years, but religion, it can adapt over 1,000 years. This is super fast adaptation. It's like, fuck, like in 30 years, you got like 1 million changes. Like, well, fuck me.
But
like,
now we have
religion
CRISPR.
Is fast enough.
Now we have CRISPR, so we don't have to fucking worry about the genetic component anymore. Yeah.
Well, if we can be wise enough to adapt it correctly, right?
Well, that's also interesting because religion used to be for peasants. I mean, there's two kinds of religions. There's the one that you control people with, which is for peasants. And then there's this sort of like really radical religion that emerges in priesthoods. And you see these are where sciences emerge, like Jesuit, St. Thomas Aquinas. They're in this frontiers religion, which is beyond anything people are fathoming or considering, to the point that people worship these people for being intellectuals, not just for being spiritualists. And now when that gets taught, eventually gets out far enough, 100 years later or more, that that's what they're putting into the peasants. But the peasants aren't educated, and they don't even have the kind of education necessary to make and formulate thoughts, right? So we haven't taught them syllogisms, philosophy, all kinds of these things that are really useful. All we can do is teach them Jesus was born on January 1st and died December 31st, 0003280. Memorize these dates, memorize these places. And so a lot of the peasant religion becomes all about how well you were able to memorize facts and figures. And that's a very different kind. When we think of religion, we're thinking of the people's experience with it, which is not what, I mean, this is the difference between the person listening to a Latin mass and the person conducting the Latin mass, right?
Yeah, the layman's people. Yeah,
the layman's don't understand it and they're wooed by it, sure, and they're 100 years behind the times, but that doesn't mean there isn't a scientifically advanced and kind of surreptitious heresy that's around the priesthood that's just kept quiet, and it always exists because they're constantly thinking thoughts.
Yeah, that's the Masonic element. Yeah,
it's not just Masonic. I mean, you can call it Jesuit. I mean, Neoplatonic.
But like in relevance to the conspiracy world, it's essentially the Masonic element.
It's a good word. I like it.
Yeah.
So are you trying to say that there's some hope because there's this secret group of geniuses that are going to guide us through the storm? Is that,
no, it's actually the exact opposite. It's a secret group of geniuses compelling us to our doom.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
Could be. Let me see here. I got escaped monkeys loosed on the Highland Village. Be careful if you're in Scotland. I know we have a few listeners out there. There's a monkey running around, and he's up to all sorts of monkey
Welsh
business.
People? No, I'm joking.
The Japanese macaw. Ouch. Those poor Brits. Okay, how about in defense of Maria Abramovich?
What's up? What's happening?
So, artist who just performed.
Why is she relevant?
This is why.
Oh, no.
I'm gonna tell you why. And I'm gonna defend her. You guys just watch. This is crazy.
Not like this. Not like this.
Artists who performed in the nude at the MoMA's 2010 Maria Abramovich exhibition. So this is long ago, right? They just sued the museum. So not Maria Abramovich. This is some guy who was doing the art. If you recall, what it was she had naked man and woman at the door, and you had to walk through them. And you have naked people being grabbed by their genitals by the audience that are paying $1,000 to see this. And it's pretty horrible. But at the same time, as David Plate has mentioned, she's kind of gaslighting.
Was the groping part of the plan, or was
no? So it was, the thing is, the exhibition was do whatever you want to me. It's just
so what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It's an Aleister Crowley satanic quote. Art, right? But yeah, so people would walk through. I don't want to show the pictures of it because it's literally just people bouncing into his wiener, and like and hitting boobs on the side of their faces. It's not that great. But the point is, the guy said, he wasn't prepared for this, didn't know what was going to happen, and I'm like, her name is Marina Abramovich. Have you not seen her work? And he says he sued the New York institution, accusing it of failing to prevent sexual assaults against him by the museum attendees, according to this complaint filed in the Manhattan court. Now, on one hand, there's a part of me that wants to say, yeah, dude, like, good for you. Like, 15 years later, yeah, like, and Maria Abramovich, blah, 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 blah. On the other hand, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, this guy, what a ploy for attention. He waits 15 years until no one's even talking about it anymore. He's upset that people touched him while he was naked at the MoMA. Like, what were you thinking was going to happen at the MoMA and naked? And by the way, Marina Abramovich she acts as a witch. Her public persona, the art she does, there's no question what she's going to do. You're lucky she didn't feed people sushi off of you. That happens sometimes.
Right.
Like, I mean, I just don't understand.
This woman this woman within the WikiLeaks Podesta emails is accused of eating poop. So like, I don't know, like,
well, spirit cooking in general, but in menstrual blood. But the more important thing is, the more you look at Marina Abramovich, is she not just hazing Podesta and his friends? Because she does this weird art that is bringing in the weirdest kinds of people. She's like a bug light to draw in pedophiles and Satanists. And I don't want that light to go out, honestly. I think it's
why?
Because if you want to see them all be have you not watched A Bug's Life where they all like head towards the light
and then die?
Stop, it's too beautiful. That's what a bug light's for. That's exactly what a bug light's for. She's
but
a bucket of fish.
But like she's
a honeypot.
I see her more so as like an asset rather. Like she's like like a Ghislaine Maxwell character.
Maybe, I don't know. Even Maxwell, I wonder if I really hate her as much as like I hate Epstein. She really, I mean, until I get like a list of names that proves what she is or what she isn't, like I don't really know if I believe the official narrative on Maxwell. I mean, like the fact that she's been the only one arrested means she's probably the least evil of the entire group by my logic of justice. I don't know much about things that happened after 2008 with Maxwell. Because the thing is, all of the Epstein Maxwell stuff ended by the time Obama came to office and he pardoned him or whatever when he moved the thing happened, right? So it's not the same after 2008. And we're again with talking about things that happened in 2010. Like all these things are 15 years, 20 years ago. So it becomes really confusing. And you look at what Epstein was doing, and he's recruiting girls in a pyramid scheme, right? Which is the most American thing. Like it's basically the Girl Scouts. I mean, but he's been, someone made that possible. Someone made that. And the idea that Maxwell knew what was going on. I mean, look at every video I've ever seen of her. She's talking about her love for the ocean. You know what I mean? She thought she could use this to propel her to be what her father wanted her to be, which was some world diplomat that ran things. And so I can see how she could have been another person under the ploy of Epstein. And Epstein probably charmed her and made her feel loved and everything. I don't know. In defense of everybody. Like, why are we so sure that the official story that we're hearing is the right story?
Right, no,
That's
but
so
regardless of the case, I just see them all as, accessories of crime. So yeah.
But
so are we.
But doesn't Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, don't they qualify as bug lights that bring everyone in?
Yeah, that's what Mossad probably wanted Epstein to be. It sounds like that was the plan. It sounds like, we don't know, but could be, right? I mean, because he's got all this footage, and that's like a traditional thing to do: is you entrap these people, they do some things, and then you've got it all recorded. These are also people that are in Florida. I have a lot of sympathy for victims, but less sympathy for Florida itself.
I'm trying to remember. There was a Mormon guy who was doing a similar thing. Do you remember the Mormon guy that was hunting down pedophiles?
Oh God, yes. Oh,
hell yeah! Hell yeah!
I met. What's his name? Oh, dude.
God damn, what is his name?
Mormon.
He got into trouble because he got caught, like, in order to infiltrate the pedophile rings, he was pretending to be like a customer, and he's like going to these strip clubs, and he found like there was an underage stripper, and he like touched her boob, and he got in trouble for underage activity trying to hunt down the pedophiles.
Dude, what's his name again? Oh man!
What a beautiful vigilante. God.
And so he's like
so innocent but like retarded at the same time.
It's the you're what's the metaphor, the adage where you're like everyone's a hero until they live long enough to become the villain, right?
Sound of Freedom, right?
Yeah, Sound of Freedom, dude.
Tim Ballard. Oh my gosh, it took me so long to do. Yeah, Tim Ballard went and he came by the Cass Castle when we were working there. And I don't want to say he seemed methy, but like it seemed like to me it seemed like a little weird. But I figured the deal was, yeah, if you're this swole pumped pedophile hunter, and his whole deal is he has to go undercover. That he's drinking soda and doing meth.
This is what I'm talking about.
If you're hiding with cartels, you have to probably do meth, right?
Okay, so the militia argument that I was talking about, man, this is what I'm talking about. The right-wing gun community is filled with people like them. They will never work together cohesively as a group.
You have to see the photo of this guy's tattoos in order
to
go Mormons, they're like squeaky clean. In order to become this gangster dude, he like gets all these fake tattoos that are cringy as fuck. You have to pull it up right now. Andreas, pull it up.
I'll do it. Fine. But he looks like one of those like new metal fans and 13-year-old boys in the year 2000. I don't know if I look for it. Are they gonna? Because I'm on moderated search. I'm gonna turn this moderated search off.
Oh boy! Oh boy!
Find here.
It's fucking hilarious.
Why do you use Bing, by the way?
Why? Because I'm a very strange guy, I think.
Gotcha.
I feel like Google Images has decayed.
Yeah, I don't trust anybody to do.
Yeah, post 2016, it's definitely decayed due to the censorship firewall they've added.
Yes.
But dude, what the Joe?
Do you know
Yoder?
what that is?
Yoder?
I
What
think
the fuck?
I think it means fuck in Spanish.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, Yoder is a natural fortress. Yeah, probably. I guess. I don't know. Yeah, that heart right there. Like, are you kidding me, bro? That heart right there.
Oh my
That shit
God.
has to be temporary. That shit has to be temporary. Ain't no fucking way.
But you can tell he doesn't drink that much beer, which is pretty
Yeah,
impressive.
No,
So
that shit looks all that shit looks fresh, bro. That shit's temporary.
it's all super fake.
It was all
and
shiny.
He would bring
Yeah,
girls
yeah,
with
yeah.
him. He'd bring girls
That's
with him. This is a big-
hilarious.
I mean, I don't want to come all against
That's
him because I met the
hilarious.
guy. I don't really think that he's like the worst person in the world, but it
No.
sucks the way it went down because he shouldn't have gotten girls from the church involved. He had bringing women down with him, and like these women have never dealt with cartels. What the heck are you doing? Like, get like a Dutch prostitute before you get a member of the church to go with you. Like, they're gonna have more.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You're talking about his couple's ruse.
Yeah, the couple's ruse was real. I think the couple's ruse was what got him in trouble because a bunch of girls were like, I felt like sexually assaulted because he had to like grab my butt and kiss me in front of a cartel guy.
I'm not beating down on the guy, right? It's just like I commend him. I commend him for his his intention and everything. He's just like a misunderstood hero, man.
That's right. Like Brigham Young. Yeah.
Dude, this couple's ruse.
At least he tried.
It doesn't sound good for a guy who's trying to be a squeaky clean Mormon. It's like, hey, lady, we got to play the role here.
Especially when there's plenty of polygamous Mormons in Mexico. Like, he was just too close to paradise. You know, it could have been one of those things. We got to
convince these guys that we're a couple. You know, get over here.
We're at the 2-hour mark. Do you guys have any more subjects you want to talk about before I have one more I'm going to talk about in a rant? But then you guys, what's been on your mind this week, Seth? What have you been up to? What have you been thinking about?
Oh, I've been watching Vinland Saga, the anime.
Hell yeah!
Nice.
I just filmed the podcast.
Wait, which platform?
Some of the Netflix.
Netflix, gotcha.
You got a podcast out though? New episode?
I did a podcast with a Mormon internet philosopher who discusses anime. So we bounced a lot of concepts back and forth, and I'm rewatching it with my brother right now. So it's just an amazing show.
Sweet.
The reason I asked for the platform is because like I've been trying to find new episodes of the Vinland Saga, and like I've been seeing screenshots on Twitter, but I can never find the actual episode.
What's the Vinland Saga about? I mean, Viking?
It's just it's like some Icelandic dude fighting his way back home.
Dude, think of this. Like, think of like the Viking religion versus the Christian religion. It's like
in an anime, yeah.
I will watch that. Yeah,
it's very funny because like this is in the perspective of the Japanese people, the way they understand Christianity. It's so weird.
And like you know how we have the concept of like Islamic extremism.
Yeah.
You know? Well, they build up these archetypes of the Viking extremist who's like, I kill for Valhalla. And
so the Christians are the good guys in this?
You've got the Christian extremist who's like, I will never punch anyone. Turn the other cheek 100 times. Turn the cheek.
Oh man, they turned it inside out. That's a bummer, you know, because the Christians used to like cannibalize the Vikings.
Right.
Yeah. Vikings are not. Like I said, all you got to do is go look at a Swede to know how violent the Vikings really were. You know what I mean? They're not really as violent as you think. Maybe that's just all the like kidnapping of beautiful women that they eventually became a softer people, but I don't think so. I think the Vikings are completely misjudged, and in every way.
I heard that polygamy actually softens the man. When the man gets outnumbered by all his wives, he's like, okay, we're gonna bring out some feminine equality. We're gonna implement.
You see this with Saudi Arabia a lot. The princes, holy shit. Yes.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, if you just have what you need, you don't need to go get more and try to make concessions for it. Oh man,
the wave of estrogen outnumbering you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I can dominate one woman, but 4 women, man, this is a handful.
We should do at some point. We should talk about polygamy more because, like, it is an interesting thing. After talking to Jacob Isbell, just that idea that polygamy, the way Joseph Smith's description is where he's got these magical psychic marriages to like old ladies that have kids already, and he's not sleeping with them, at least not as much as it. Like, compare that to like Brigham Young, where like you can read Wife 19 and see what women were going through when they were property. Essentially, it's different. It's very different. Like the idea that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy you could debate it and you could win that he didn't, just based on the fact that what he did is not the same thing as the words defined by. I find that really interesting. But
so are you gonna debate him on that?
I don't know. Jacob is a hard man to like. If he will, like, you got to help convince him that it's worth. Like, either he's afraid that he's gonna lose that one, and it's a bad idea to put that one out there against a guy who doesn't really care one way or the other. But that would be the worst, I think. But I mean, I do care about talking to Jacob Hansen. I do love him. I love him.
Yeah.
Like, I love people. I want him to be successful and happy and healthy. So I would love to converse with him about it more, because the ending isn't to get the audience to change their mind. It's really to get us to learn something from each other.
I think within 10 years, Jacob might be having to leave the church if this trajectory keeps going. Ooh. So he might need some Andreas Xirtus therapy in 10 years.
That's what the time travel church is doing. I come a few years early just to traumatize you into thinking so. There's the word of curse. I want to talk about this one last thing, which is, I remember that episode of South Park, It Hits the Fan, and it's the one where I thought that also isn't. Yeah, okay. It Hits the Fan is the episode where basically they decide that the curse word for feces is allowed. Anyone can say it, and the entire town starts counting up all the uses of that curse word. People use it around the water cooler. Kids are allowed to use it. They're just saying this bad word, and they think it's kind of funny. But what they find out is that they're getting sick. They're getting sick from saying it, and people are dying. And then these Templar Knights show up, and the Knights Templar say, "We fought off to defend you against these horrible words of curse, and now people have brought back the words of curse." And these words are cursing each other. They find this ancient book in the library that shows them that, they really shouldn't be. I mean, it seems so American, so free that they're allowed to say these words, but they realize that they're literally cursing each other. And that's when South Park decide like they're going to stop using curse words because they actually have effects.
I've heard a lot of esoteric perspectives on this. Like, there's a lot of literature, especially in regards. So there's a lot of, especially, I've come across a lot of people that study chematology that also believe this as well. That like certain words, like the curse of Ra type shit, right? Like you say something, and it's the tonal vibrations or the frequencies, whatever you want to attach to it, somehow emit whatever energy to actually physically harm you on like a subatomic level. I mean, that's the whole free energy Tartaria guys of what they're doing. So I mean, there's something to it for sure.
So from like a scientific neurological perspective, like it kind of makes sense, because like the brain, the way I view the brain is like you've got all this stimuli. It's like you've got different words in different parts of your brain. And so like you could think of like each word that you absorb is like a button. It's like, oh, this button got pressed, this button got pressed. And like you're pressing all these buttons, and like it affects your neurochemistry, and you start thinking differently, and we're vulnerable to our inputs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think even psychologically, you are training these things. So these words have to do with at first being used for bad reasons, and then you start using them, and no one's stopping you from using them, and you realize that they're not actually doing anything bad. But subconsciously, because you think they're bad words, you might be creating negativity by using those words. Even consciously, you're not aware of it anymore because you're used to cursing like a sailor or whatever. But that because it's been, as a child, you were taught to use these things are bad, you've synthesized a curse in that sound that wasn't there before naturally.
All right. I think there's more, like there's other value, like developing metacognition is probably a valuable thing. Like learning how to restrain yourself is like building your prefrontal cortex muscle. And like the prefrontal cortex is like the most important part of the brain for humanity, like self-control. So
Freedonian rebellion.
So like, cultivation of self-control is a good thing usually.
Freedonian rebellion happened. Good job, Texas. Oh, last one. I can't help myself. Okay, in Provo, the fish bandit's been taping fish to the ATM machine.
Is this it's Utah? This is the hell. Oh shit! I thought this was Australia for a second, because like this trend.
Provo, Utah. The fish bandit, teenager who calls himself the fish bandit, has been arrested for taping fish to cash machines.
This trend originally started in Australia. Holy shit! It caught on to the U.S. What the fuck? Why?
I don't get it.
You're
Yeah,
just
what
taping
is
fish
this?
to ATM machines. This
This
fun.
is just this is just trolling the banking system, right?
He's fish trolling. That must be what it is.
He's catfishing and
No,
trolling.
the
at
thing
one
is, our current generation has the current generations of people that are coming out right now post 9/11, Gen Alphas have progressed beyond the humor of meta irony to the point is nonsensical.
I mean, I
It's
find
just
it funny that they're not arresting people performing actual phishing scams, but they get the money. Got my pun in. I'm sorry. Okay. That's pretty good. Let me show them where they can get your material. Seth, I go to
Transcendent Philosophy on YouTube, etc.
The Transcendent Philosophy and check out his newest video, which
Ethics
is this on
of
here?
Vinland Saga.
It's the second one right there. It's on live. The live.
Oh, it's a live one. Sweet. Yeah, guys, remember you have to go live to find this stuff. I will definitely check this. Oh, it's Milanic. I love that guy. He's Croatian. Good for him. Yeah. I don't know if he likes me. I think once a Croatian finds another Croatian, they're like, well, what's the point? You know? But yeah, go to Transcendent Philosophy, watch that video, check out all of his content. And if you want to find Gumwoo, you can try. It's hard. So you go to Discord, go to the Discord entry, learn how to type Korean and type his name, and you'll find him in there. And he's in there. He's talking about stuff. So that's pretty good. And then, yeah, that by way, go to the Tartary Nova Discord. Thank you guys for being here and checking out the show. I appreciate that you all made it. That's pretty cool of you.
Hell yeah.
Love you guys. Well,
peace.
All right. Bye.
Okay.